Hello all, and welcome to our 4th annual Fraud Month, where we aim to bring you insights related to fraud, the industry, but also identify tools to support your business. Going on to the next slide, we have a quick roundup of what we have installed for you this month. September 15, we have Priceline and MasterCard talking about cardholder disputes and chargebacks. On the 16th, we have WorldPay giving us an overview of what it's like to review 100 billion transactions. September 22nd, we have Up in the Air and MasterCard talking to us about a new solution called Actuary, which is a credit risk monitoring tool for a sustainable payment ecosystem. And on the 23rd, we have Sabre and Doug Nass talking a little bit about more recent instances of phishing. And then on the 30th, we have our in-house counsel talking about Know Your Customer. But the series would not be complete if I did not extend a huge thank you to all of you who are participating here today, helping us to make these sessions and this Fraud Month a success in the past 4 years. So again, just a quick thank you there for everyone. So just some housekeeping before we get started. Please feel free to ask questions. There's a Q&A section on the GoToWebinar toolbar. So please feel free to type in your questions there. We will either respond to them as they come in, if they're relevant to the slide we're on, or we will try to get to them towards the end of the session. In addition, the webinar, as always, will be recorded, and we will be posting it out to our website for future review by either you or your teams. Now let's get started. My name is Cornelius Hutton. I am the Director of Revenue Integrity here at ARC, and with me today I have my colleague.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Nass. I'm the Director of Fraud Investigations here at ARC.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Doug. Judy, if we go to the next slide. It's just, again, so today we set out to review some of ARC's insights that we have either obtained or have been tracking over the years. This will include the impact of COVID-19, how that changed the industry landscape, credit card fraud, what we see, how we manage it, and the savings it supports, unauthorized ticketing, phishing emails, malware and ransomware attacks, manipulation of after-hour services, and the importance of vetting your customers and business partners, all of which we've seen a new trend starting out this year. So as we move on to look at this changing landscape, we start with a quick recap on some of the aspects which changed the travel industry landscape as we know it. With the onset of COVID-19, it truly stress-tested the industry and the systems and historical processes. Governments closed their borders and travel all but came to a standstill. Merchants had to change their risk management tactics, and hence card holdbacks became an essential part of establishing a cash reserve and mitigating new risk amplified by COVID. In fact, our historic belief that payments by card was to be faster and cheaper and safer was put to the test with holdbacks, advancing and hoping to mitigate merchant risk. Unfortunately for some, it had the opposite effect as holdbacks became a cash drain for the airlines, potentially triggering bankruptcies original processes meant to avoid. And as we know, unfortunately, a number of airlines did go bankrupt in 2020. Now looking ahead, air travel is slowly but surely resetting itself to 2019 levels, especially here in the US. Although be it mainly domestic and leisure, with business travel still falling behind compared to previous statistics, and is likely to remain so based on yesterday's Wall Street Journal article titled "Business Travelers Expect More Zooms and Few Trips this Fall." Now, as corporate travel obviously is a big part of the industry, we still deal with geographical restrictions. And these are also constantly changing as new variants of COVID is discovered. This all is having this all is having everyone look towards the governments to assist in the restart or continued restart of the industry and manage restrictions and requirements for an all-round safe recovery. But it's not only governments who play a role. Acquirers and airlines need to manage risk and balance the need for holdbacks and consider the impact of that on the industry and the ability of airlines to restart. That says, cash flow remains key for airlines to avoid new levels of debt. Managing costs of doing business in this changing landscape will be essential. Innovation and efficiencies within the airline processes and payments will be key going forward. And we already see some of this coming out and new solutions coming forward. And actuary is one of those. So join us on the 22nd to learn a little bit more about what actuary represents. Now, going on to the next slide, we go beyond the systems and we start looking at what the impact of card fraud was. In addition to the industry going in reverse, and of course we've experienced this in ARC where refunds were the norm most part of the year, we saw changes in card fraud ultimately shift as well from the general fraud that we used to deal with to something slightly different and more in line with first-party fraud. And we spoke about this in previous webinars as well. And I think last year in our 2019 roundtable with Chargeback 911, double dipping was a key factor and a new type of fraud that we started seeing appearing. And this still remains a problem today. And this raises the question as to how should we manage risk and fraud in the future. Currently, we know that old models that are still in place today don't necessarily manage fraud or avoid fraud. It just manages the fraud by passing it along. And that's not the position we need to be in. We need to be proactive in fraud management. We need to try and get ahead of it. The best way to do that is through collaboration. And Doug and I have been talking about collaboration for a very long time. And it's something that we strive to continue doing on a regular basis. And we'll get into a little bit more about how we go about collaboration in some of our own statistics coming up in the next slide. So just taking a quick look here at ARC's insights as it relates to fraud trends. And it's very specific to card not present fraud. And as you can see here in this graph, this is really trending from 2019 through to 2021, where we can see in 2019 fraud was on the rise, and as predicted in one of our Focusrite articles, well not ours but Focusrite's article, I think it was back in 2018, the prediction was that airlines may see losses of $2.8 billion in fraud towards 2020. We can see that clearly here on this graph as we started the year of 2020, sitting on a recovery amount of about $140,000 there by ARC. Now, fortunately and unfortunately, the onset of COVID, obviously hindered that spike, and we can see that there's been a real drop in card activity or fraudulent card activity through the months of April to June, with a slight uptick starting up in July and continuing climbing year from July through and towards the end of the year and continuing into 2021. The expectation is that this trend will continue, and we will touch on this shortly. But let's first look at some of our additional statistics on what we've done here at ARC to help prevent risk and, of course, financial losses to our industry partners. So as we move into the next slide. So in order to just give everybody a background as to what it is that we do here at ARC, we predominantly look at the form of payment fraud in 4 categories, and we categorize them as corporate fraud, which usually is driven by a single actor building on social engineering to do corporate agents and centers and issuing tickets for non-company employees. In this category, we see that it is trending at historically low levels for now, as we wait for the corporate travel sector to resume. Loyalty fraud has also all but disappeared through 2020 and 2021, and this is also likely due to the recovery of corporate travel, or lack of recovery. Traditional fraud, and this is our daily grind, which is mainly credit card fraud, where ARC looks at matching compromised credentials across our systems and across the booking environment. And something that we've started tracking more vigorously over the last couple of years is the hacking or unauthorized ticketing incidences, which this year has also seen a little bit of an abnormal uptick. And this is normally where a bridge has been left open or a phishing email has been sent to an agent and someone has clicked on that link and credentials have been obtained that way. Now, in all these instances, ARC makes every effort to alert the agents via our fraud alerts. Christine Hettish does a great job of sending these alerts out, and of course is fundamental in making sure the agencies are aware of what is happening or coming their way as it relates to a booking. But we cannot do this alone. We rely heavily on the feedback we receive from the travel agencies, and therefore timely responses in collaboration with the agent and the airlines has helped us save the industry hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, as has been noted in this chart. We also use this information and confirmation data of fraud to support our ARC risk check environment, a tool that we brought to market, I think, probably going back to 2 years now, to help all agency do a quick reference check within this collaboration tool to see where fraudsters have hit or have been confirmed. So definitely worthwhile checking that out. Now, moving on to our next slide, we talk a little bit about expanding a little bit more on the data we just looked at and sort of what we do within our fraud alerts. And we can see that for 2020, our teams have sent over 1,000 fraud alerts to our agency community, which means there's definitely fraud out there, and it's a big problem. But driving not only real dollar savings, as shown in the previous slide, but also projected losses related to extended fraud activity, inability to void or refund some of these transactions, and of course managing downstream fallout, such as debit memos and or chargebacks. In these statistics, the projected savings are in the millions of dollars for the industry. So this was just a quick overview of some of the work that we do here at ARC on behalf of our stakeholders. But I'll hand over to Doug now, who will give us a little bit more of an overview of what we've been experiencing and seeing from fraud and fraud schemes over the past year. Doug?
Thanks, Cornelius. I can go back to one screen just to add a little more. We've really started to see a rise in the return of the fraudsters, who all but, as we mentioned earlier, all but disappeared by, March, April 2020. Whether the numerous West Africa, down in South America, the domestic fraudsters, everyone just almost completely went off our radar. But since the vaccines have started to come out, they really started to show up again in about March, April. As more people are getting vaccinated, getting excited about making their travel plans, we have seen a really big return of all of these actors. And they're targeting mom and pop, corporate, online, they're back in a big way. There's, after a year plus of pent-up demand, they need to make money too. And so everybody's a target, whether corporate, a brick and mortar, online, and they've gotten very sneaky. So I figured, let's go through a few of the scenarios that we're seeing that have come back in 2021. So next slide. So here is a sneaky corporate fraud scheme in which the fraudster is trying to pose as an existing international corporate client. They love to manipulate the corporate travel agency, and they'll often even go as far as to try to get a true employee at the corporation to send an email referral saying, please expect so-and-so to email requesting travel. Of course, these are going to be for unprofiled travelers. And what's neat, or what not so neat, is how they're using email domains that are very similar to what the true corporate email domain is. They're going to go in and they're going to create that email address that looks quite similar, possibly even believable. But this is a recent one in which the fraudster's gone in and he's created mazars-law-es.com, and he used that to get a referral into the corporate travel agency to say, hey, expect this travel or these travel requests to come in. And then, of course, what he's going to do is then start passing along compromised credit cards. But one of the key things about this is there's a really neat, easy to use website called whois.com. And if you're used to seeing your corporate clients come in with requests with a particular email domain, and it has to be very specific. There can't be one character off. There can't be one additional character. It has to be exactly like what you've always been working with your corporate clients who are requesting travel via an email. But you can see that if the corporate travel agency that has dealt with Mazars, which is an international, I think it's a law and accounting firm. I had to look it up on Wikipedia. They have over 40,000 employees around the world. So this is the exact type of entity that they would like to emulate and try to, manipulate the corporate travel agent. So if you've had the Mazars corporate account for 10 years, and what's neat about whois.com, you put in the email domain, and it'll tell you when it was registered. So that was just registered on July 12 of 2021. So this should automatically be a red flag that if you've not dealt with that, throughout the tenure of that corporate client, you need to pull back and start asking questions, not of the sender, but of your main contact at the corporation to say, hey, we got this request for travel. The email domain is not quite the same. Is this legit? So that's really super important, because at the end of the day, you really need to know who your customer is. And this Whois, it takes, I must use it every single day that I work, looking at suspicious domains. It's really easy to use. It's not someone's using a Yahoo or a Gmail account, Hotmail, all those free services. This is not for that. This is for established domains. So that, and you'll see this over and over again. We use it in-house, very user-friendly. But at the end of the day, it shows the lengths that the fraudster is going to go to in order to make themselves look legitimate, on the up and up. And sometimes we've had some difficult conversations with agents when we say something's not quite right here. And they come back to us and say, no, everything's fine. We're like, well, can you go back and check one more time? Almost every time they'll come back and say, yep, you're right, it's a fraudster. So just keep that in mind. So next slide, please. Here's another guy. I know it's one single guy who loves to target the after-hour services. Been chasing him since September of 2016, so 5 years now, unfortunately. Through our data warehouse, I could see that he's been doing this since at least 2013. He's issued, so there's over 200 incidents involving this one particular caller. And he's rung up losses of about $2.2 million that ARC is aware of. He does target travel agencies overseas as well, but I can only see what's happening here in the US market, in the ARC world. But what he's doing, and I have numerous recordings of him, so I listen to what he has to say. He's quite smooth. He's a smooth talker. He likes his chat with the after-hours service, and he knows that he's targeting them because oftentimes it's the middle of the night, late evening call when that after-hours agent is not in a position to verify any information. Oftentimes he's coming in as an executive at a big corporation. In the last, starting in about 2019, he started claiming to be a university president as well. So, you know, when these guys use those types of titles, it puts pressure on the agent. You know, they want to, you know, it's a client. They want to, you know, do the right thing and get them the service that they expect. So it really puts that frontline agent in a tough spot of how do they proceed. But one of the things one of the telltale signs is that they're always asking for ticketing for unprofiled travelers. That's number one key. So that should be a red flag if you're talking to your after-hours service, you know, either your own employees or one of the other companies that handles after-hours services. Get something in place that, you know, there's a policy, unprofiled travelers, after-hours services, that, you know, if possible, that you'll say, you know, this is going to have to wait till morning when people can do it. Another key thing is, and this is what makes him quite slick, is he's always going to request the PNR, so the GDS PNR and also the airline PNR. And he wants that over the phone because he's going to provide a legitimate but generic email address for that university or that corporation, something like info@abccorp.com, sales@xyzcorp.com, purchasing at you know, MNO Corp. So they're legit because we know that the agent's going to fire off an email, or at least one email, with the itinerary. He doesn't want to bounce back because that's automatically going to alert the agent that something's amiss. But by having them, and he'll stay on the phone for over an hour with the agent to get his tickets for his own customers. And he's quite sociable. He's pleasant. He's never mean. In all the recordings that I've had, because he wants to keep that agent on their side, right? He just wants to get that out of them. And the key, you know, what really makes this guy interesting is that almost always he's using the lodged card in the account. So he never has to bring out like card after card to, you know, that may not go through the system if it's a compromised card. He's just using the existing lodged card, and he'll make that known. So he's pretty sneaky about that. So those are some things that if you have them, if your agency has an after-hours services, you get them to realize if that account doesn't allow for unprofiled travelers, that should be in writing. That should be part of the process, the procedure to say, I'm sorry, I understand you've got these last-minute travelers, but this account does not offer travel to unprofiled passengers. And also, if the caller is asking for the PNR over the phone, you'll say, and what's key is if the caller is the only passenger, they have the profile, there should be some information that you can vet under there. But it's once that caller starts asking for the travel for unprofiled travelers, just never give out that PNR over the phone. That's key. So that's really important. Going on to the next slide. Oh, next slide, Judy. Judy, do we have the next slide? Did we lose?
Judy?
Hi, Doug. Yeah, hi, Doug. I am advancing them. I am on slide 12. Do you see that?
Okay. Yeah, there it is. Okay, there was just a delay. Okay.
Yeah.
This is
sorry about that. Sorry for everyone on the phone.
Doug, we also have a bit of a pause here. I just want to make sure, can everybody see by raising your hand that everybody can see the presentation? I just got a message in that someone wasn't able to see it, but is everybody able to see it? Just raise your hand, please, on the Q&A section. Thank you, Patrick.
great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the last sort of major fraud scheme that we're dealing with, and this is a big problem in the industry and in the US right now, is unauthorized ticketing. And so we'll spend a little bit more time on this one, but unauthorized ticketing occurs when someone has remotely gained access to the login credentials of usually a frontline travel agent. And that involves, for the most part, receiving a phishing email that, and there's an example along the right-hand side. Probably a lot of people have seen this, and this happens to claims to come from Sabre. It's not from them. The fraudsters simply lifted their graphics and some of their information to make themselves look legit. But the key to that is that it's asking in that green box, sign in, to urgently click on that, log in with your sign-in credentials, and then it'll actually take you to the real Sabre sign-in spot. Unfortunately, the middle part is used by the fraudster to what I call he's harvesting credentials, the login credentials. So a lot of the times the agents have no idea that they've just given up their login credentials to a fraudster. And we believe they're probably likely operating out of West Africa. And the key here is that they're going to use those login credentials late at night when usually the agency's down or closed up, and they have passengers who are already waiting at the airport 5, 6, 7 hours ahead of us. And he's going to issue his tickets remotely using those harvested credentials, and the passenger is going to travel before anyone wakes up here in the US. The fraud's already occurred. The fraud is already, and a lot of times the passenger's already flown and completed and they've gotten to their destination. This was a huge problem in the industry here in the US in 2009 to 2014. At that time, we were able to work with law enforcement, federal law enforcement, and we were able to have some people arrested in 2013, two of them in 2013, and then a third one in 2014. For the most part in the US, up until 2021, we really didn't see that activity, but boy, it's come back with a vengeance since about February of this year. It's very concerning. ARC has pushed out multiple fraud alerts. We're trying to get the word out to everyone to, beware of these phishing emails where people are unknowingly giving up their login credentials. And another odd thing that we've started to see just within the last couple of weeks is all those tickets were a form of payment cash. So they were kind of easy to spot. They stuck out. They oftentimes were issued by travel agencies that don't have West Africa travel, which is most of this issue. But now we've seen that they've made a little tactical change, and they're starting to insert compromised credit cards into the bookings to make themselves look more legitimate. So this is in response to one of the GDSs clamping down on the issue of these cash tickets. But these fraudsters, they don't stop. They just come up with a new way in which to get what they want, which is those airline tickets for immediate departure for their own customers. Now, okay, we'll take a closer look at the phish email. Thank you, Judy. One of the interesting things here is just looking at the from. So it claims to be from Sabre, but the mail to RFQOYE, I'm going to mangle this, but coinersorex.com. So you've got to ask, going back to who is, you should be able to find out who the heck is Coinersorex and what do they have to do with Sabre. But if you look down here, it's asking, that you upgrade, or that Sabre's allegedly upgrading. But what's interesting here is there's a nice misspelling. So always look for these type, awkward word usage, punctuation issues, and just straight up, misspellings, because it's highly doubtful that any GDS is going to let something like this out the door. And the alleged upgrade is for mid-August of 2021. So, okay, one more click. And here's the bottom half of that. And it's just looking at, and once again, that green box is the one that they want you to click on, and it really takes you into their website where they're going to harvest those credentials. But there's just some awkward punctuation, some awkward wording. Effective date, June 2nd, 2021, all global countries. That's just all. What does that mean? All global countries. It's just a very odd phrase. And this is actually what we saw between 2009 and 2014. A lot of the same characteristics in the phishing emails in 2021 share what was happening, 7 to 12 years ago. And it's sort of a threat. Unconfirmed agent ID will be automatically locked, but there's no period after that. Increased productivity period, but increase is not in capital letters. Sabre period. Is that how anyone would sign anything? And it's not easy to show, but in the black area, there's another misspelling in the red area of training, TRAINNING, so that double N in the middle. Unlikely a GDS would make such a mistake. And then the street address is interesting as well. It says Sabre is, and it's Sabre is run as one word instead of a space between the E and the I. And then 2211 North First Street in San Jose. That's definitely not Sabre. That goes to PayPal. So you start to see, if you just take a little bit of time looking these over, the misspellings, the awkward phrases, the punctuation, the, all of that wrapped together. Now you can go to whois.com and check out what that domain is. You can Google 2211 North First Street and then find that really that's coming from PayPal. Why would that happen? One more click. And now here's key, is in order to uncover where that embedded link is going to take you to, you take your mouse and just hover over anywhere in the green area and you'll see a little box. And if you see down the line in the middle part, industrytraveler.com, now you've got another email domain that you can go on to whois.com and figure out, when was that email domain created? So this is not only for travel, for any GDS looking. This is for anything you get, any attachments you get, or any embedded links. And it doesn't mean that all embedded links are bad. We here at ARC, along with a lot of the financial institutions and law enforcement, when we send our sensitive data across, it goes in an email with an embedded link. But I always make sure that I hover my mouse over the top of that embedded link to look where that's going to take me, and does it match up with the sender. So those are things that in everyday life, just because it's embedded doesn't mean it's bad. You just need to take extra precautions before clicking on that. So next, click. And so since the beginning of this year, here's just some more of the phishing domains that the fraudster out of, we believe it's probably Ivory Coast, most likely it could be Cameroon, possibly, but they're going out and creating these. Some of them are just crazy. I wouldn't even know how to spell some of these. A couple of them seem like, well, maybe, redworkspace-saber.com, but if Saber has, saber.com for years and years and years, and you get an email in April 4th of 2021, and that email domain, according to was created 3 days before, something's wrong. You need to have that antenna up of something's just not quite right. Then he's using crazy things like Pittsburgh classifieds. Once again, we see that about halfway down is Coiner Soyrex, and that was just created July 3rd of this year. Industry Traveler, August 5th. So it really doesn't take long to go onto that website, whois.com, put the email domain in. Once again, Yahoo and Gmail and all those free services, it's not going to work. But it's just another tool that you can use to say, you know what, I'm not safe. I don't feel safe clicking on that link. You got an email that has a PDF in it. The email has an Excel file. They want you, the user, that you're not expecting it from that user. If it's another crazy domain name, go to Whois. This is important because it will roll, checking on when these email domains were created can be very helpful in order for you to, not be defrauded by someone. And this works in the rest of your life. We know that fraudsters are sending this out to try to get people to give up their bank account information. All kinds of information by blasting this out to as many people as they can, getting as many as they can to give up their private information. So it's just not for use in the travel agency. This is a rest of your life type of good place to get used to going to Whois. So next slide. And here, one of the last ones we want to talk about is the cyber threat landscape. It is causing problems not only on the agency side, but on the airline side. And here's some, and specifically in the ransomware. So what they do is they entice somebody within the agency or the airline. They've got an email, it's got an attachment. Either it is a link to a login site, much like the fake Sabre one, or also, or it might have an attachment, a PDF that has malware. So once you click on a PDF or an Excel file that's in that as an attachment, you're downloading malware. And now the fraudsters got the keys to the kingdom. They're able to go in and remotely start to take care of or take control of your system. And what they're going to do is they're going to drop encryption on it. And they're going to lock you and every legitimate user out of there. And they're going to send you a Twitter or some type of text or something saying, "Dear CEO, we've just taken control of your systems. Let's, and this is what we want." And so they're going to ask for some type of ransom to send the decryption keys back to you so that you can retake control of your systems. And that has happened, obviously, in the on the travel agency side. I think in 2020, one of the major TMCs was hit with this, and headlines did say, you know, they paid $4.5 million to get the decryption keys back so that they could retake control. Here we've got the Lockbit gang hit about 2 weeks ago. They hit the Bangkok Airways and took control of, encrypted their systems. So there's a lot going on, and you know, you just have to. And all this information has to be pushed out. It's not good enough that the owner and managers know about this information. This has to go down to everyone who has GDS access. Any employee that has access to your systems has to have this type of training about be careful about clicking on links, clicking on files embedded within emails that you're not expecting. It's just, you know, that's the current environment that we work in today, and everyone has to be, you know, very careful about all of this. You know, and these guys are out just to make money. A lot of them, you know, Eastern Europe, Russia, the same ones that you see on the nightly news and then the newspapers, hitting all kinds of industries. They're hitting us as well. So collectively, we all have to, you know, be highly aware of what's going on when it comes to embedded links, and you know, receiving emails with attachments that you're not expecting. So, Cornelius,
I would say that, yeah, I was just going to say, you know, like over the years, definitely ransomware and cyber threat has become a big player in the travel industry. And, you know, historically, it wasn't necessarily a big target on travel, but we definitely seeing an increase, you know, in ransomware in the travel industry. You know, there's a couple of public ones out there, but you know, there's many more behind the scenes that are not being reported out that who are affected, and everything is flowing through cryptocurrency and demands are made in crypto. Yeah, it's definitely valuable to be informed, and sharing this information with all your team members is essential, especially phishing emails. You know, any door that can be locked, keep it locked. You know, proverbial door, keep it locked, and you know, prevent access as best as possible. So, yeah, definitely good insights. Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes continuous training as well. This is not a one-time listen to it and then forget about it. It's constant reminder. Like we at ARC have monthly training that we're all required to take, and so it allows, you know, these really important security procedures, you know, constantly putting them at the front of your mind about not only, your online hygiene, your mobile phone. We just had one this month about, mobile, be careful of conducting business on a mobile phone. It's a constant battle to keep sure, to ensure that frontline staff are being aware of this and, making sure that they're taking the precautions they need, because all it takes is one employee to, fall for it. And you and I talked to someone who was impacted by this 2 years ago, and it was the president of the company. He said, "This is the most awful thing that's ever happened that we've ever had to deal with. It's just a miserable situation to get yourself involved in." And that's even if you can pay. And they paid the fraudster. It was a whole another entity, but it cost them even somewhere a whole lot of money to regain control of their systems. Anything else?
Yeah, and everybody, we've got some time, so please, get those questions in. We don't have many questions out there, but yeah, if anybody has anything, please send them through to us now. I think one thing, we've one slide left that we want to land on, just as a reference for you and sharing some information out with you on resources that we have made available to you via our websites. And of course, feel free to explore the ARC risk check solution as well. This is also an area where, it takes a couple of minutes just to validate a single or new customer to you, and having a positive score makes that sale so much better, and avoids the risk associated with any, especially when it comes from unknown customers or new customers. Yes, there should be. I just got a question in. Thank you very much for that. There should be multiple sessions on the ARC website, even from previous years, around how to manage fraud, how to deal with mitigation, etc. So I'm not exactly sure which link to go to, but if you go under the fraud page or revenue integrity page, you should find a big list of previously recorded webinar sessions. And of course, as this month progresses, we will start any of the new ones there as well. Yeah, I just got another statement in here, so thank you for that. I'll just read it out. I have received a lot of calls of people wanting tickets to Dubai or India, and they are customers to this travel agency, and move that risk onto the airline. I think that's definitely an option there. But you can also double check. Again, we mentioned the ARC risk check as a tool there that could help you as well, potentially mitigate that risk. If you do feel like you want those bookings, but again, if you don't want the risk, pass them along. Yes, and there's another question. The session on the 22nd of September is going to be about actuary, and that's a tool that will help with mitigating payment fraud, etc. Doug mentioned to be careful of conducting business on mobile phone. If you have time, I'd like to hear a bit more about that, what to watch for, etc. Yeah, Doug, do you have anything else there to be shared, specifically on the mobile phone?
Just as a way in which I know, I can access my email, my work email, from my mobile phone. If I'm getting texts or links that I unknowingly click on, and now some malware has dropped onto my phone, you know, everything about me is pretty much compromised unless I become aware of it very quickly. So that's, you know, super important. We always get these shady texts. I get them all the time, and they want you to click on that link, you know, whether it claims to come from Amazon and, you know, all those other ruses, you know, whether they...
Or you just want a prize from Amazon for $1,000.
Exactly. You know, yeah, come get your $1,000 gift card. So that's why I go back and say, you know, this is knowledge for your everyday life outside of the travel industry work. You got to be careful. There's so many fraudsters that
also
so much. Yeah.
Unsecure public Wi-Fi connections also avoid if you can. I mean, if you have a data plan, run your data plan instead of a Wi-Fi connection at a hotel or any public space. I think that's another good thing to be aware of. Unless it's a trusted entity.
Mm-hmm.
So I just got another statement in. I was just defrauded by the West Africa scam. Please send any information that you might have to our stopfraud@arccorp.com. That's stopfraud@arccorp.com. Any fraudulent transaction or any fraud that you might even think is coming away, even if you booked a ticket or not, send us that information to stopfraud@arccorp.com. The team uses that information. We put it into our systems and we look for it. So if you have anything that you can validate and confirm as fraud, send us as much information that you can, please. We use it. We upload that information to the Perseus Arc Risk Check tool, so it becomes public. It becomes, you know, for whomever signs up to that, becomes a community resource or information. So please share whatever you can with us at stopfraud@arccorp.com. And then another question.
Or let me just include, because we look at every one of those emails, because especially when they contain passenger names and credit card account numbers, driver's licenses, passport images, all of that, we run them all the time to find out, has any other agency issued a ticket against that card or for that passenger or passengers, and then we are able to warn them to say, hey, you recently issued these tickets. We really think you're dealing with a fraudster, and we'll convince them to stop issuing additional tickets. So it's that we can't always stop the fraud, but if we can mitigate it, you know, reduce it, the exposure, then that's still a win for us.
We have a question here. Has any of the ransomwares been traced and fraudsters caught? Unfortunately, most of these instances are not dealt with using bank wires. It's all cryptocurrencies, which makes it extremely difficult to trace. Although I know law enforcement have had successes in the past to trace on crypto, it's still a very difficult path to take. So for the ransomwares that we're aware of, I've not heard of any of those being traced back to the original fraudsters. Doug, I don't know if you have anything else on that.
No, at least not any that impacted the travel industry. I've not heard of any arrests.
Okay. Yeah. So here's a question, Doug. Although you know, the information that we shared around to check emails, check spelling, check for mistakes, don't you think this is too basic for fraudsters to use these tactics? I just want to add that these guys are sending out thousands and thousands and thousands of these types of emails. They don't care about spelling because they know there's going to be someone who's going to click on it. Yes, it's not necessarily going to be every single one. There's going to be one guy or one person out there who's too busy or distracted enough and click on that link and you're in. So yes, it's very basic. Yes, it's very what's it called, preschoolish. But it works.
Yeah, and they're going to stick with, as long as it still works, all those bad, you know, misspellings and awkward English usage and the punctuation. It's because, yeah, they don't have, it doesn't have to be perfect as long as they're successful. We've been tracking it since the beginning of the year, the unauthorized ticketing, and I don't know if we're approaching 100 different incidents in basically 7-8 months. So they don't need to improve their game because they're still getting enough people to fall for it that that's all they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then, you know, again, just to, you know, validating what we said here at the beginning is that fraud is definitely on the rise. Someone just wrote here saying they just had a fraud yesterday. It was a caller, and it was a phone booking. Fortunately, the agent was, you know, had their wits about them, and they didn't proceed with it. So, you know, well done there. But again, just a validation that fraud is definitely on the rise, and these guys have, you know, the travel sector has been off limits for a while because of COVID. It's back online, and we remain targets. So, you know, be vigilant.
Yeah, and just to say, you know, going back to the fraud alerts that ARC sends out, and usually it comes from fraud analyst Christine Heddick, please, you know, we're sending those out for a reason. So I would say within the last 24 hours, we saved one agent $10,000 in savings because they got duped by a West African who was claiming to be the part of the United Nations development, that he was in the procurement section, and he duped the agent because the agent does have, they do work in that area, but somehow the fraudster found out about it and he manipulated them. And the initial fraud, the agent said, no, there's nothing wrong here. We normally do this. Thankfully, Christine said, are you sure? There's just something not right about it. And we got the agency to take another look, another review. And they said, yes, this is not the legitimate UN. And they were able to start to void tickets and save them through voided tickets. It was just a little over $10,000. But now think about that. If they were doing that $10,000 in ticketing every day, how long would that scenario go on before the agency, you know, it's weeks and months before that first debit memo comes in. So that's, you know, where that savings comes in, and to say it's not just the ones that were voided, it's that we stopped the agent from dealing with a known fraudster and you know, letting those losses pile up.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you know, we know it takes time to recheck things, but you know, in most instances, if we flag something, you know, even if you don't come back to us, just go double check it for your own safety and sanity. Yeah, you don't have to tell us. I mean, it would be great if you tell us if it was the case or not. But you know, if you don't want to, that's also fine. But you know, at least do yourself a favor and go double check. We have the ability and the data sets to, you know, look across the entire sector. So you know, we see something, we don't, you know, sometimes we get it wrong, but I'd say 9 out of 10 we get it right. So it's always helpful to check.
Yeah.
Questions out there? I think we have a few more minutes left here, but if there's nothing else, I just want to thank everyone for participating here, and thank you for some of the acknowledgements in that came through about this webinar being informative and helpful. So thank you for those, and it's always great to bring information forward that can benefit the industry.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, we've 5 additional sessions this month, so please join us there and see what else there is to learn. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks. Bye now.